Hi everybody, thank you for stopping by to watch this video. In this segment, I'm going to show you sort of an impromptu project that I started to work on this year. And it's just knitting some balls out of my hand spun yarn. And I do like little messages on them. So I was inspired to do this because I see all sorts of really cute ball forms with, decorative elements on them. Like, for example, this, which is sort of stupid, but I mean, it's just a bell, piece of rope, plaid ribbon, and a plastic or silk piece of holly with some fake berries. And it's just really cute. Somebody thought to make this, so I thought I wanted to try and make my own kind of a Christmas ball, probably a tree ornament or whatever. So right now I've got 4 of them completed, and I have one I'm just finishing up. And I have every time I finish one, or as I'm working on one, I think, oh, what would look really cute is if I would do this or that. So each one of them is typically inspired as I'm knitting the one before it. So the first one I made is this one, and it's really simple. It just says joy, or it says soy, and it's possible that I may have missed one stitch on the top of the J. There's that one. And then I made one. The next one I tried to create a little bit of a pattern on the back of it. So it's called Love. So it's sort of turning into like an Advent wreath theme, but not really on purpose. And this one I've just been kind of fiddling with. I put a little red ribbon on it, but I haven't really gotten too much into the decorating of them. Then I made this one, Hope. And I can't remember where I finished this. I think I was in the car waiting for somebody because it's stuffed with tissues, facial tissues, because I didn't have my regular stuffing. What I used to stuff them with is the scraps that I get from the comb top. And someday I'm going to become motivated and post this. So this is wool. It's clean. It has been, it's just the waste from the, when I get comb top made at Zylinger's. And I have a big, huge bag of it here. I got this when I was at Rhinebeck and probably stupidly sold 2 bags this size for $10 each because I was just stressing out about how am I going to get everything back in the van, because I had 5 enormous bags of comb top as well, plus all the other stuff that I brought. And on the way in there, the van was packed full. So anyways, I still have 2 of them left, and they really work nicely. They're clean, but they still sort of smell sheepy, so it's nice. And I will be listing those someday. So anyway, so that's what they're stuffed with. This one I made, this has got the black background, and then I wrote Hope, right? Oh no, this is Ho Ho. So I kicked over to Santa Claus. So yeah, if I have anybody that's not, U.S. based, my husband and I were raised in a Judeo-Christian, we were raised Christians, so we celebrate that holiday, Christmas, which is Jesus's birth, but it's also got a whole other stuff piled onto it. And, at this age, I'm looking at some of the traditions and wondering, what must other people think now that the world is getting smaller and we're, getting in contact with, other cultures and other ways of doing things. But anyway, one of the things we do is we make balls and we put them on a fir tree in our house. I don't know. All right, so there's that one. And then the last one I'm working on, it's still on the needles, is it's a graphic. Get my needles in the center here. I still use double pointed. I know there's all sorts of new things you can do, but I was taught on double pointed needles, so that's where I'll stay. So this is like a cute little sheep. And this is, I just downloaded the pixels, that's what I'm calling it, that's not what it is, but the graphic, right, with the graph paper and everything. And used that There's things, my next inspiration is I want to do a profile sheep and a face-on sheep, kind of like the bobble hat, and circle it all the way around. And the reason I want to do that is because I did it a funky way. I didn't bring the alternating color around. I just kind of lazily went from one side to the next. Let's see if I can show you. I just didn't feel like dragging it all the way around, so you see what I did. And it came out terrible. Each stitch on the edge is really big, and it looks kind of funky, but whatever. But the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm thinking about decorating them now, and I thought I would show you some of the decorative elements that I have and get your input if you feel like giving me feedback. The thing I will tell you too is I'm using all natural, these are the mill spun yarns that come from a run I did 2 years ago now. So it was like britch wool and older ewes, all the stuff that I don't do by hand and don't offer as raw fleeces goes into this pool of fiber. And I got 5 colors. This is the fawn, black, and I got this, I think this might be my last skein of white that I took for myself because I need the white to make the sheep on my little ball. Okay, so decorative elements, what I have, I tried using a larger bow on one of them and it just ended up looking ridiculous. The proportions were terrible. So I went out and sourced, I've got 2 very, very narrow, I bought these at Michael's. One is like a burgundy and one is a red. Just pretty ribbon that I'm going to use as the bows. I like the plaid ribbons better, but they didn't have plaid in this narrow. So that's how that's going to look. Then I bought this, I don't know what this is called. I call it a cabin plaid. I just love this plaid color, the black and the red. And it's got wire, so I might try something with that. This is, if you've never seen my videos before, I am in what I call the wool cave. So this is my basement, and I've converted it into a studio for my spinning, my carding. There's a space in the back for me to do my packing because I sell and ship product off my web store. And then lots of storage area. There's a carding, drum carder set up over there. But this little corner here is where I do all my needle felting. And so that's why I'm set up here with my ornaments. But at any rate, what I was thinking of doing maybe just scrunching it up a little bit. So it's like this. It's just really big though, the proportions are sort of funky. But I really love this plaid, so I'll find a use for this. I could also, I've got some pretty red thread that is back from the days when I was a dyer, which I'm not anymore. But maybe I could use that as sort of a bow. Then I found these small, these are the smallest pine cones, or as my sons used to say, pine combs. C-O-M-B-S, pine combs. And I never corrected them because I loved it when they said stuff wrong. So with the bow, I don't know. It's kind of big though. These are from a larch tree. So I've got 2 larches that I bought during a Master Gardener event at our county cooperative extension. They shed their pine needles. They're pine trees, but they shed their needles and they're beautiful. And they have thousands and thousands of these little cones. I don't know, I think they're a little bit big as well, but maybe thread those on. I think I am going to do that for a couple of these. I got that. And then I made a Christmas sweater for a contest when I worked in the office, which seems like a million years ago. It was 2 years ago. I was working in an office every day. So I made this adorable, I took a sweater I had that I never wore, and I made this Christmas sweater with it. So I stuck little decals on it. I sewed one of these things. I don't even know if it still lights up. Here's the front of it. Oh, wasn't I clever? It still lights up a little. like that. So I've sewed those in around the perimeter, actually using this more of a burgundy color. Needled in a snowman, knit this little scarf, little carrot nose. And then sewed all my bells that I actually use for my felted sheep on the wrist. And then I bought these really pretty sparkly jingle bells with some gold thread and sewed that. So I was very jingly and decorative on that day. And I also embroidered some of the words from Christmas time: Noel, give, hope, love, peace, jolly, believe, joy, and yum. Sewed some tinsel on. And I came in second. And the guy that came in first just wrapped himself up in gold tinsel. But anyways, so what I was thinking I could do, I've been, you know, ripping off these little bells as I make my sheep kits. But maybe one of these bells might look cute. Or maybe a couple. Those? No, those are on the small side, right? You just can't win. I do have jingle bells somewhere. Little ones. That I could put on there. That would be fun to drive the kittens absolutely wild. So maybe string a couple of those. Have them hang down with the red thread. I don't know. What do you... I'm just kind of trying to get creative. And then I have these... I'm going to turn this light off. These very decorative jingle bells here. What did I do? How did I... Oh, these are a string. It's a string of bells. And I just attached it all the way across. But maybe, I'm going to cut one of these off. It's probably going to ruin... The whole string is going to go crashing. Where's the beginning? Bear with me just for a second. Oh, there it is. So here's the beginning of it. I'm going to go clanging to the floor. Nope, we're good. I'm going to check the one with the bow on it. Okay, that's a little cute. Maybe with two of those on there. So, that is what I'm doing for whatever reason. I'm going to finish up this one. And then, like I said, the next one will have sheep all the way around it. Maybe it'll be enough stitches for 3. Because at the most stitches I have on here is 36 total. They're pretty small. And I don't know, these are small just because the first pattern that I downloaded using, I didn't work on gauge or anything, just using this really, it's actually a pretty lightweight, DK Sport is what it says on the label that I got from the mill. And I'm using teeny weensy little needles. I can't even see. US 1, 2.25. Yeah, so they're really small. So I'm at the point now with this one, I just need to stuff it and finish it off. And then I'll have a set of 4 little ornaments. That's what the boys used to call them. For me to decorate. So let me know what you think. If you have any other ideas. This is pretty much the extent of the materials I have. I don't want to have to go out and buy stuff anymore. I do have other types of evergreens that I could use, but I don't know how well those would hold up year over year. But that would be cute too, maybe little bits of evergreen stuck in there. So, where's the other ball? Soy. There it is. And if you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a great Christmas this year. Enjoy time with your family. Today I am skirting all the fleeces that we had sheared on the 18th of April. And I have a very routine, specific process that I follow in order to keep good records and then also have information for the purchaser of the fleeces. Not every sheared fleece goes to sale, so there'll be some fleeces that are, for example, ram fleeces. They're very dirty because I don't coat them. Those will automatically go into comb top. Then there's fleeces where I do an evaluation and I determine that the shearing quality is not acceptable to sell as a raw fleece, and so those I will put in the I process category. So those are fleeces that I get to turn into comb top or yarn or bats or whatever. And then the third category are the fleeces that actually do end up going out for sale. And so the data collection process is pretty important, and I try to do the same uniform process for every fleece. So I thought I would take you through what I do using this fleece here, which is from our Fanny. This year I'm using these cards. They've got two sides to them, and the information on them just helps me as I look at them throughout the year for doing different things. So this is our Fanny. She was born in 2015. She's out of Siena and Canterbury. Two really great fawn catmugget sheep. She's a fawn catmugget. Here's a sample of her fiber, and this is the fiber samples that we used when we sent them out for the micron testing. Then what I'm doing, it's a little bit different, is I'm cutting out the entire micron result rather than rewriting it. So on this one here with Fanny, you can see she's got a nice narrow histogram. So she is 6 years old and is still microning with a spinning fineness of 23.6, which is pretty remarkable. So she's still in the flock. She's one of our foundation breeding ewes. On the other side of the card is my scorecard for the fleeces. So now I've got everything in one spot. And here's where I write down the name, the ear tag, just to make sure that it's a double check to make sure I've got the right fleece for the ewe, how old she was at shearing, and then a checklist here to make sure I take a photo. And then I'm collecting weight data, whether it's root or sheared. And because these are sheared fleeces, I'm taking a pre-skirted weight and a post-skirting weight. With the root fleeces, I only root off the wool that I'm going to sell to a hand spinner, so that really wouldn't be applicable. Then I make a note of the shearing quality. If there's a lot of second cuts, if there's a mat because she's hit the rise, that maybe will make it difficult for someone to process. And then the 3 dispositions, whether I'm going to sell it, process it, make it into comb top, and then a little space down here for commentary. So this one's all set to go for Fanny. So let's take a look at her fleece. The very first thing I do is take a weight of the full fleece in the bag before it's skirted. One of the metrics that I find interesting is how much wool gets taken off for skirting because of the amount of breech. And the less breech waste, the better. So this weight is 59.8 ounces. This is where I do all my skirting every year. So I'm on the north side of the house, just outside the garage, because in the garage is where I store all the fleeces after shearing. And it's really simple. I don't have an elaborate setup. It's 2 sets of horses, and then the grid wall that I actually use for my fiber festivals, I just repurpose it as the table. It's nice because little bits of fiber can fall through the grids, and you can see I've collected a little mat of fiber over the years that kind of works its way into the driveway, which I just leave. It doesn't bother me. So this is a good size for the Shetland fleeces. They're not super enormous, and it allows me to spread them out completely. I've yet to have a fleece that be extended beyond the dimensions of these 2 pieces of grid wall. Here we have Fanny's fleece. Like I said, she is a fawn catmugget. Before I unbag it, I guess one thing I will say is when we buy the bags for shearing, we buy them specially making sure that they're clear plastic. The reason for that is it allows you to read the index card after shearing, so you can easily tell whose fleece it is, what year the fleece was taken. And we always buy really large bags because I don't want to have the fleeces get kind of stuffed in the smaller bags. So I dump it out, and then I grab the ear tag, not the ear tag, the fleece tag, and then I have a little clip, which is what I use to keep it from blowing away. So I'm going to very gently open the fleece up, and what I want to be very careful of is to ensure that I don't open up the fleece structure. I want to keep it as much of a blanket as I possibly can. So that's really where most of my attention is. And as I'm going, there's little bits just from debris that was laying around during shearing on the bottom side of the fleece, and I sort of just pick those off as I go, and those will go into a quilt batting collection pool of wool that I'm starting. So I'm gonna have quilt batting made this year. Fanny's fleece was enormous. It's always a very nice big fleece. The thing I love about the way Aaron shears, his fleeces are always, number one, they're always intact. And he cuts it, he shears them exactly the same way every ewe. So they all look exactly the same in terms of where he cuts the neck and things like that. So it makes it really easy for me to identify the different sections of the fleece. We're almost there. A couple more edges to pull out here. And then I will give it a shake, and it gives you a sense of if there's second cuts. It doesn't appear as if there's many second cuts on our Fanny. She always shears up really nicely. And also as I'm going, if I see large pieces of hay or grass or whatever, I'll give those a little pick. Okay. So the fleece is now laid out, and I just want to show you the different sections of the fleece. So on a sheep's fleece, the neck wool is usually the softest, and the wool that kind of covers their behind, called the breech wool, is usually the coarsest. Our program is focused on breeding so that the wool is as consistent as possible, as far into the neck as it can get and as far back into the breech. So I know a lot of hand spinners will spend time sorting fleeces based on neck and breech for the different wool types. Because the Shetland fleece is so small, we really want you to have as much wool that is the exact same throughout the whole fleece that you purchase. So if I have, if I can go in a little bit to my neck wool and a little bit into where the breech of the wool is, and that's still good and it looks the same as the stuff in the center, then that's a good fleece to me. That's a good ewe that I'm going to use for breeding. I want to just talk about how this fleece conforms to the body of the sheep. So if you look at this fleece, right here is her top line, her backbone. And this is probably like the back of her neck, probably right about here. And then it extends down. And this section right here is that piece just above the tail. So if you saw the shearing videos, you saw him shear this, and then he would take the tail separately and just kind of clean that off. So this is the piece that's just above the tail. So when he shears the neck, you remember you saw the clippers kind of went up under her chin, and that's this section right here. And so he kind of went off and offset off to one side of the chin, so there's a heavier side, more neck wool on one side than the other. I kind of call that her little indignant stole that you throw over the shoulder. But that's what that part is. So that's kind of the underside of the neck. You can see on the fleece here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a very deliberate separation. So this is where the coat is on the neck. This is where the coat begins on the neck. And so this is all neck wool here. This is all the wool that you see, that huge mane when you watch our sheep out on the pasture. That's what this is. It's filthy dirty. It's got tons of VM in it. It's got bits of manure on the bottom part because they're laying down there, and you can see really dirty. So what I'll do with this is I'll skirt this off. Skirting just means removing it from the main fleece. And this will go into a pool of neck wool that I'll work on through the year. So this is the wool that I get to play with. Okay, so then the next piece of it, this is all neck here still. This is her front leg. So this is the wool that tapers down, and then you remember when you look at our sheep, they've got real bony, hairy ends of their legs. But it does get covered with wool. Most of this will get skirted off, but there is some good stuff here. You can see right here. Definitely wool you're going to want to use, but that's wool that's on the leg. So I'm careful. I try to make sure to preserve stuff like that so the spinner has that, but then also to remove stuff like this where there's quite a bit of manure and dung. These are called dung tags. That's a dung tag where the wool is just so caked with mud that there's no value in even attempting to wash that. So this section here is the side of her belly. So the belly wool has already been sheared off. When Aaron shears, he shears the belly and throws that to the side. So this piece here was not covered with the coat, but it is the side of her belly. This section here is her back leg, and you're going to see this wool approaches a hairy texture. So, and the reason for this wool becoming coarser and more thicker gauge, not as fine a micron, is when there's bad weather, the breed tends to put their back to the weather, to the cold wind or whatever, and so this creates a more dense mat for insulation for the animal. That's kind of like the genetic evolution of, you know, how they're using their fleece on their body. And then this section right here is, you know, this all here is britch. So this is all going to get removed, and this will end up going into my comb top pile. Now Fanny does have a little bit of hairy britch here at the very rim. That I'm going to throw into the quilt batting, because that will never be nice for comb top. It's really bristly and coarse, which is not a fault. It's perfectly fine to have coarse britch wool at that point in the body. So that's kind of the tour of the fleece and how it conforms to the shape of the sheep herself. So what I'm going to do is just take a quick look at the bottom side, the skin side, where the shearing took place, just to see, because for me, this quality is excellent for a hand spinner. It's got beautiful lengths, very nice and clean. So the only thing that would maybe disqualify it is if it has a lot of second cuts. So I'm going to take this side here, I'm going to just sort of flip it back on itself. Oh, look at that. I mean, this is just dirt from the shearing floor. This is really nice. This is what I like to see. I'm seeing, no, it's good. So, you know, with Shetland fleeces, my assumption is you're going to either flick or comb it. And the reason I assume that is because you've got such a well-defined tip. Any Shetland is going to have this tip. Now, we coat ours, so it's going to be ever so slightly blunt. But that does not open up when you wash it. I should say that I've never experienced this opening up when I've washed these fleeces. They always stay fairly tightly closed. And so my method of opening those up is to either use a flick carder or a comb. If you're going to be using a flick carder or a comb, and if you have little tiny bits of, there aren't any, okay, well there's a little one right there, it just came off. That's going to come off really easily in a comb, and that waste isn't waste that's going to go into that poundage that you paid for, because you pay by the ounce. If I see a significant amount of second cut or see some pieces where you're going to have a lot of waste, then I'm not going to offer that fleece as a hand spinner's fleece. That one is going to go either into comb top or, well, this one I would process it. But I have just made the decision. I'm going to take a look at the other side to validate it. This fleece is going to be of a quality to offer to a hand spinner. I think a hand spinner would be delighted. And it's really important to me that hand spinners are absolutely delighted with my wool. And I think this would just give such a pleasant experience to work with this. Again, this is Fanny's fleece. So when I talk about second cuts, let's just talk about that for a second. If you've watched my shearing video, which I highly recommend you do, if you're interested in this, then you're certainly would be interested in the shearing video. Then when you watch the shearer kind of go across the sheep with his clippers, there could be a point in time where maybe he doesn't quite come close enough to the skin, and he goes back over it again for a second time. And what that generates is a long slab of a piece of wool that has staples that are only this long. So he's actually cut into the lock and then has created a second cut. It actually kind of stays with the fleece, and you end up with this very disappointing large piece of wool you can't use. Comes off, but did get incorporated into the weight of the fleece that you purchased. So for that reason, it's really important to me not to have second cuts. There's also times where he makes a successful clip and then maybe, you know, 3/4 of the way through the pass hits some bumpiness, because with the Shetlands we've got that rise. And when he hits the bumpiness, there's also going to be some generation of second cuts there. It's unfortunate. Again, like I said, those particular fleeces, if there's a significant amount of that type of situation, I will keep those and process them myself. But I'm very confident in offering this fleece to a hand spinner because I think it's delightful and I would love working on this fleece. Another thing I just want to mention is Fanny is a cat mugget, and what that means is that her side, the bottom part of her body and her sides is going to be darker than the top side of her fleece. So in the piece of the section of fiber that's going to be going in the hand spinner's piece, she actually has this darker section up along the top. There's like this pretty triangle of maybe more of a darker taupe wool versus the wool off to the side here, which is a beautiful leg color. And the benefit of this, I wrote an article in Spin-Off about this, you can make really pretty gradient yarns all from the same fleece, from the same sheep, which is super cool. But yeah, see, there's plenty of dark wool on this fleece if that were something that the hand spinner wanted to do. For this fleece that came from Fanny, 6 years of age, with a micron spinning fineness of 23, I am very comfortably going to offer this fleece for sale. And once I finish skirting it, I'll be able to do the post-skirted weight and then put a price on this fleece and list it on the website. So skirting, I don't know where that name comes from, but this is a skirting table, and I am going to skirt this fleece, and all that means is taking off all the undesirable, unusable bits of the fleece all the way around. Things that there's a huge amount of caked manure, or an excessive amount of VM, or the britch wool, which is remarkably and dramatically different from the balance of the fleece. All that stuff comes off. It all gets used for some purpose. So the britch wool will go into my comb top. These hairy bits with the manure caked will go into the quilt batting. And then, like I said before, the neck wool up there at the top will get skirted off, and that'll go into a pool of neck wool that I'll process over the rest of the summer and fall. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and skirt this fleece, and I just kind of go around in a circle. And so I'm just gonna start, and I'm gonna do a visual here where I'm gonna say that the britch cuts here. This is the wool that's gonna go to whoever it is purchases Fanny's fleece. And then there's this hairy quilt batting stuff that I don't even want to have go into my comb top. And the quilt batting goes in this black bag. All my fleeces, any quilt batting is going to go into that one pool. The britch wool, I have a separate bag for my britch wool for fawn colored wool, so that I'll have some fawn comb top. Hopefully I'll meet the minimum. I don't think I'll have a problem with it. So that goes in there. There's a little bit of quilt batting. So here's the second britch. I'm going to cut it right about here. You can sort of see the coat has kind of worn a little pattern, so you can sort of see the little groove where the coat was. So that's britch. I'll just take off some of these end pieces that I don't want in my top. Don't know who that is. Okay, so then when I come around the sides, there's short pieces, and then there's also bits of manure cake pieces. there's going to be manure on the actual fleece that you buy too, because you know these sheep are raised in a barn, and there's, you know, it's just gonna, you're gonna have dirt on there. So like I'm gonna leave that, but the piece that's really saturated with it I'm taking off. I'm also going to remove this real matted piece. I just don't think that that would be pleasant for a hand spinner. Now this is the wool again that's right down near the belly. It all looks okay to me. I kind of pick it up and lift it up on the side and just look and see if the pieces are too short. Once again, I don't want excess weight of wool that's not spectacular going into the fleece that's going to be offered to a hand spinner. So that goes in my comb top. All right, now this is the sickening part. You're going to be sick when you see how much fiber gets removed because of the neck. And I just want you to remember that vision of my ewes out in the pasture with that massive mane, and it's all going to go. So here's that section where the neck. All right, this is not for the faint of heart, you guys. You ready? This is all the stuff that's going. And this is staying with me. Oh my gosh. That is so wonderful. Oh, I love this girl. Oh, thank you, Fanny. Just got chills. Whew. Okay. Now I'm going to come circle back around so there's not that much left to remove here. It's a shame because these are part darker portions, but fortunately, like I said, Fanny does give you some darker wool here up on the top. There's some caked with manure, taking that off. Real heavily matted. You can see there's just an unacceptable amount of VM. Alright. Okay, so this fleece is ready to find a new home with a hand spinner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the card for the fleece, put it back in that clear plastic bag, and I always try to make sure that the words are facing out for ease of access later on. And then very gently, being sure to maintain lock structure. I know there's a correct way to fold a fleece. I don't know how to do that. One of these days I will learn that. But I just kind of gently let it go in there. So now this fleece is ready to get weighed. And once again, as is my custom, I forgot to take the picture of the fleece after skirting for my sale listing. And so I'm going to take it back out and spread it out again in order to get a picture. It's so nice. I did end up getting to spin her last year, and it was a great, great pleasure. Oops, I found another little bit. A good year's work right here. There's the coating and the shearing and the fiber sampling and the careful selection of second cut hay for the nutrition is what gives us this gorgeous piece of beauty. All right, so I'm taking the picture. I'm going to take one of the whole fleece spread out so the potential new owner will see that. And then I do a close-up shot of a lock at mid-rib, which is pretty much the same spot where we collect the fiber sample. Actually, I'm going to do it over here just because I like how that laid out. And that allows the hand spinner to get a good sense of what the lock structure is and the crimp and everything. I always keep the card with, you know, in the frame, just because later on I can take that photo and know that it belongs to this fleece. Rolling this up. Carefully, gently. See who it's from. Now I'm going to get the final weight. All right, so this is the skirted Shetland fleece. I get this question a lot. How much does a skirted fleece weigh? And this U is 34.2 ounces. So 34.2, which is pretty good. So her initial weight was about 60. So this is better than a 50% yield, which is, I'm pretty happy with that. Shearing quality is excellent. I didn't see any second cuts. I looked. And I have the disposition to sell here. And I did take the photos, so that's done. So that is my scorecard. I talk about when I have to score and rate the fleeces. That's what we're talking about. It does take time. Plus that it's my opportunity to say goodbye to this year's fleece and all that work. So I wanted to show the difference between a fleece that's been sheared with clippers, meaning the fleece has been cut off of the sheep, versus a fleece that has been rued. And ruing is a process where you take advantage of the weak spot in the Shetland fleece, also called the rise, and you can pluck the wool from the sheep. And it doesn't hurt the sheep, and what you end up getting is a very consistent staple versus a fleece that's been shorn, maybe before or after the rise, potentially having some either excess tips or a weak spot on the shorn side. So this is the rude fleece on this side, and this is the fleece that was cut with the clippers. The cut with the clippers fleece is a full fleece that has been skirted, so it's got both sides. The rude fleece I'm showing you is just one side of the U, so I usually rue them from the top and work down to the bottom, to the belly section. So I would say that one of the differences when you look at it from the top is you can see there's a little bit more puffiness underneath the tips on the rude fleece, whereas on the sheared fleece, it's the wool underneath the tips is a lot more compact. And that's because I'm plucking the wool off, and it has sort of like elastic reaction, so it'll kind of snap a little bit, and that sort of opens up the wool on the bottom. It's still being held together by these closed tips, right? But the wool on the bottom is much more open through the whole length of the staple. So this is the bottom, and you can actually see the different sections as they were plucked off. Like here's a section, here's a section. You can sort of see these little cottony billows. No shear marks, no second cuts, no neps or noils. This is the actual authentic end of the staple on this Shetland. This Shetland is a yearling, this particular ewe, and I rued her last year. So another benefit of ruing year over year is that there's no excess growth from the prior year that maybe got clipped after the rise, right? So this is the actual full tip of this particular ewe. So quite a bit more open on the bottom, but still a very good close tip. And this was done deliberately, as I was ruining it, making sure that I did not pull the entire lock off, that I only pulled off enough so that the tip would stay intact. And that's what allows you to be able to wash it and comb and flick hard, whichever way you like to do it. You'll still have a good intact lock. When you look at the sheared fleece, you can see the locks are still quite compact through the whole length of the staple. There's no billowy cloudiness. And what you see here is there's going to be sections. Actually, this one she sheared pretty well. She didn't hit the rise, but there's going to be little bits of extra pieces of wool from either where he sheared before or underneath the rise. And it's interesting, certain sections of a fleece on a single U can have a more pronounced rise. So a U might shear perfectly well on one part of the body, and generally towards the back is where they hit more of the issues, where it's a little more sticky and maybe the rise isn't as significant. So that's kind of the difference in appearance. So the reason I don't brew the entire flock is that not every sheep in my flock has a pronounced rise. They'll have some sort of a weak spot, but nothing that makes it easy for me to pluck it off of the sheep. So that's why a certain portion of my sheep get sheared and another portion get the brewing. So this is a fleece. So this ewe I actually brewed her last year, but I ran out of time, so I had to shear her. So I wanted to show a fleece that has excessive second cuts so you can see what it looks like, because again, like I said, she should have been brewed. But you can see here, they're very short. They kind of just sit on top of the bottom part of the fleece. And there's so many here that it would actually, in my opinion, impact the enjoyment of processing the fleece, because you're going to have all this waste. It's not that much in terms of like ounces and stuff, but there's just a lot of it. So this is one I'm going to process, because that is what I would consider to have excessive second cuts. Hi everybody. This is the time of year when we register our lambs, and 2021 we picked the naming convention of characters from Shakespeare's plays. So last week I did a Facebook Live, had a few people participate in helping me select the names for the lambs, and the following footage is from that event.
you.